Many new details were revealed from Game Informer's new coverage of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and now we've got photo evidence to back it up, including some really juicy images. I am your host, Zach, and I've got Gabe and Jake to discuss and dissect these photos, but I will warn you that if you are concerned about keeping the game sacred, these will be spoilers. They're not story spoilers, but they will. There are images of the interior of dungeons, there are images of a boss, and they do connect to other images to sort of piece together more of this world. So if you are sensitive to that, probably want to click off now. For everyone else, though, let's dive into the photos in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so a bunch of images were posted from the digital edition of Game Informer's Zelda Breath of the Wild cover. The first being this concept art that shows the entrance to what looks like a dungeon/temple. A very interesting one that has like mazes on the walls. I feel like I'm at the Children's Museum.
Yeah, I mean, and the first thing to point out, this connects to an image we're going to see a little bit later, just because the patterns on the left wall there looked exactly like the ones that we're going to see in a little bit here.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I just said this is when it looks like Link just went into an ant farm with all the weird squiggles.
Yeah, and my guess is this is showcasing sort of how they go from, design to actuality, which is cool because you'll see later that a lot of, like Gabe mentioned, the patterns are there. But before we get to the patterns, we get a very scary shot of this big boss, which is Windblight Ganon from the article, and he is firing missiles of some sort. He has a very gigantic and very kind of almost Bloodborne-esque form. You know, he's got some Majora to him just with the coloring and the design, but also, the lines and sort of the futuristic feel of the Sheikah Slate mixed with, like I said, like some sort of demonic presence.
How do you feel about this? Because to me, like, I don't know how I feel about it. It kind of just looks like a big, like, if like Muck took and Mega Man fused together, like the Pokemon Muck and Mega Man fused together and got giant. Like, I don't know, I feel like it's kind of almost like he could be with any temple or anything. Like, it's just not very themed or like defined. I don't know. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
To me, what's really interesting is that he's outside the dungeon.
Yeah, he's on. Well, like according to like the other bullet points from last video, that he's on top of the dungeon actually.
Okay.
Yeah. So that could be it. Maybe you're playing on like the roof. But he's so big, and like that's the most, that's the first thing you notice, that he's just so big and so imposing, and he has a giant gun on his arm.
But I just wish he was more themed. I don't know.
I think that yeah, I understand what you're getting at, Jake, and I think you can take solace in the fact that we've seen other mini bosses, or however you want to define them, roaming the world that are much more akin to the traditional Zelda boss. But these guys clearly are part of the corruption that Ganon is spreading, or that is spreading across the world from whatever source. And I think that the main dungeon bosses, whether we're to assume there's 4 or whatever that final number is, are going to be reflective, most likely, of said blight or of said corruption.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there are more photos of him that showcase even more interesting things. But before we do, we got our first interior shot of a dungeon, which, good news, looks like a Zelda dungeon, right?
It really does.
More floating skulls.
You got floating skulls, you got enemies, you've got the weird eyeball on the corruption that you will need to take out to sort of open up pathways. And it has a theme that is very similar to some images from the most recent trailer, the Switch reveal presentation trailer, and we can look at those as well. There are 2 shots here that have very identical coloring and patterning to these, so I think we're safe to assume that this is the same dungeon, or all the dungeons look like this. But I'm gonna try to put my bets on the first, that this is all one dungeon, and it looks to be a very I think the verbiage they used in the article, like mechanism, is very accurate. Like, this looks to be a moving, machine more than a building.
I was going to say, in more way than one, like, it looks like it's moving, because, again, we'll show another screenshot of the boss here in a little bit, but either it's in a different location, or the camera angle's, like, so different. Like, it's weird, because in one of these images with the boss, it looks like he's, like, just, like, out in the open. And the other one, it looks like he's like, yes, on the roof, but he also looks like much smaller. And you know, we haven't like switched the picture quite yet, but yes, it does look like it's moving around quite a bit.
And I think it's interesting that the one of the pictures that you're referencing, where it looks like he's like almost like a marble in a giant marble maze, and that could be more of like how they were talking about when you open up the Sheikah slate for a map. It's like a 3-dimensional map that you can move around and like rotate things to push blocks into place, or like maybe even open up different pathways or doors or things like that.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be a very involved dungeon, and also a very involved process of entering and accomplishing what is set out before you. You know, they said that it will be more obvious and evident what your goal is, but getting there is the fun and is the, you know, what you have to sort of finagle your way through. The next image is above the boss, which, given the size of the boss, is kind of an insane idea. And Link is using his slow-mo bow and arrow firing, which only happens out of a fall or the glider, I believe. And so clearly he has glided from some area or been, you know, thrusted up.
Yeah, maybe
somehow above this guy.
It's a wind boss that he got like blown up by Ganon or something.
Well,
like,
yeah, they did
like,
mention that he fires tornadoes, so maybe they can launch you high in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but see, this is a little confusing. Like, the scale of the boss here, he doesn't seem as big.
Maybe he's just really high up.
I guess.
And look then at the background. You know, if this is indeed the top of the dungeon, look at the size of that thing. Like, this has to be a massive structure or massive mechanism, because if we move to the next image, look how tall this guy is.
Yeah, and again, the scaling of just like the screenshots, he looks really big here. When it's Link looking up right at him and they're face to face, he looks humongous.
And I think in this image he has more of a Zelda feel, more of a Majora feel. He looks more like a beast from Zelda. The first image, I think, just pose-wise, has him looking more vampire, you know, demonic, whereas here, like, you know, he's got a bunch of, like, crystals on him. He's got that big gun arm. He's got, you know, the blight and corruption moving through him. Also, just to point out, the detail, like, on Link's pants and, like, you know, arrows and all that is just incredible. The coloring and the detail is just so beautiful.
The Sheikah emblem is on the boss as well. It's, like, right there towards the bottom where his, like, fat feet are.
Yeah, so clearly there is some relation between all of that. And I do... You know, now we can look at the picture, a still from the trailer. Here is another either dungeon mechanism or boss that has some similar purple and red coloring, as well as, like, sort of that, I don't know what you want to call it, stone, or, you know...
The ant farm wiggles?
No, the structure about the purple...
Yeah, it has, like, those squiggles on its legs. The sections. Each section has, like, the squiggles.
Yeah, and just, like, the material is, like, this stone or this, you know, whatnot. And I would think that... It's hard to tell here, but I would think that this is indicative of another boss. And the fact that we only get a split-second shot of what looks to be its legs, maybe this is another one of...
This thing is...
another one of the big blight monsters?
This is, like, on, like, the larger side of Shadow of the Colossus characters. Like, this is humongous. Well, I mean, I guess it could be deceptive, but, like, there's no, like, people to scale against. But that thing looks gigantic. Like,
wait, sort of like some sort of horse creature?
Unless it's like how they said that the temple or dungeons, like, move, unless this is a moving
I want to stop you right there. That you said there. Look at the image in the DM where, you know, it's Link and his NPCs right there, and you see what looks like a dungeon. What if that is like the top of these legs? Like, it kind of looks like it's starting to go up. Again, if you're looking at the image with Link and his NPCs, you see that the sand is like starting to move, like, around the dungeon, like it's moving. So maybe that's like this thing, like, standing up on those giant legs that we're seeing, and that's like
gets
the
up
top
and runs
of it.
away to chase it.
I mean, I don't know about that, but like,
they did say that the dungeons were, you know, that you have to find them.
Does that not make sense? Like,
yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. It's possible.
I don't know. Structurally,
I think,
like, it kind of looks the same.
But whether this is a boss or a dungeon, I think the scale is great, right? You have these mini bosses that are of normal boss size, and you have this big world. So in order to really wow you, we're going to have 100 shrines. We need the dungeon, and we need the dungeon bosses. to be massive, to be these monumental moments in the game. So even if you just look at Windblight Ganon, I think his size is spectacular and for all the right reasons.
I think that it's crazy how vertical this game is going to be because, yes, Windblight Ganon is huge, and he'd be huge if he was on the ground. But in the Game Informer article, they specifically say that you go to an outside area at the top of the dungeon to fight him. So he's already on top of a giant dungeon, and then he's like another whole building in and of himself. So like you're like basically like in a mountain-sized scale when you're fighting him, which I think is incredible.
So then when you defeat him, you like glide off of the temple. So there you go, fantastic stuff.
That's crazy.
Or it sinks back into the earth or something, you know.
Yeah.
It's like the theme of cleansing the earth, or removing this corruption, this blight, is kind of an interesting theme. The next image is in the snow. A cool looking enemy. If you get real close, you can see he's almost got like a bird mask on, or a beak type mask. It looks like. And again, just speaks to the grandeur of the world that you can see. Volcano off in the distance. You've got snow in the immediacy around Link, and cool enemies everywhere. Next image, back in the dungeon. Now we're doing some puzzle solving with Link's abilities and what looks to be a giant rock ball sunshine. There's also a crystal to the side that I'm assuming activates something when you slash it.
Safe assumption.
Yes, but this would speak to sort of that manipulation of balls and blocks and things of that nature within the dungeon.
Yeah, and one of the trailers, they show him doing something very similar, like outside in like the plateau area as well, like controlling something almost like with using the Sheikah Stone as almost like a magnet to pull it or push it.
Yeah, and also like probably like the physics that are in Zelda this time. We experienced it during the E3 demo with chopping down the tree in a certain way so that you can get across the ice cold water. We were told like that physics is like important in the game this time. So I don't know, maybe rolling this ball like down like places or whatever, like the physics engine will probably have something to do with it.
Yes. Next image. To me, I think this is inside of a shrine, not the dungeon, although I suppose there is the potential that this could be a different room of the dungeon. The shrines I have seen are all of this blue hue, and that is why I believe this to be a shrine and not the dungeon. It is interesting that this picture is directly after a picture where he's holding the rock ball, and there seems to be a slot for the rock ball in here. But I want you guys to look closely. If you zoom in and look at the sort of the metal grating, the fencing, the wall around that, it looks like that pattern is the same pattern or of the same nature as the pattern, a bigger version of the pattern on the interior of the dungeon. So that is interesting that this pattern seems to perpetuate around the world.
Yeah, I mean, and Jake had pointed out the constellations before, so like, I don't think that this is part of the actual temple. Like, this is probably a shrine, like you said, but yeah, I mean, I don't know if that pattern looks like identical, but stylistically similar for sure.
And that makes me then wonder if maybe some of these images that we're pulling from the trailer are in fact different dungeons. If all the dungeons are going to have a similar visual style, or if it's going to be like, oh, this is one, but then another has much more of a snow theme or of a Zora. You know what I mean? I'm very curious to know if the dungeons and the shrines, I guess, how much variance there is in sort of aesthetic theme. The next image is Link gliding through a dungeon, and now this gives some size and scope to the dungeon, which seems to be quite large.
Yeah, I mean,
they're saying it's not as big as like Twilight Princess, but it's clearly not just like a tiny little hut.
No, and the fact that they say you can like manipulate the dungeon from your map and like change how it looks like that. If it's not huge, it still has much variation and like just a lot of ground to cover, even if it's within the same small area.
And if you know, I was going to say that if you notice in that image, Link has that same hammer that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, and we'll get to the hammer in the next image. The last thing I point about this one is it looks like this is open to the sky at some level. The other images of the dungeon seem darker. This seems to be, at least in part, possibly part of the entrance or the exit, where there is some light source that looks to be shining in, and you can see it specifically near the top of the image and then to the bottom right. But maybe this is part of the sort of adventure into the dungeon or the way out.
And
Yeah,
I want to point out. I want to point out that another reason we keep saying that it's the same dungeon is because Game Informer said that they played one dungeon.
Exactly. Yeah, they were teleported to a dungeon.
Yeah.
The next image is Link with that giant hammer, and he needs it because these guys are big, and they look bad.
Yeah, they're like twice the size of him at least. If you don't,
I love the enemy design in the game, though. I think the uniqueness and sort of the charm and the fact that they are using scale,
Yeah, they're huge.
to me more than ever is great.
what's that in the back? Like, look at the enemy on the right. Like, there's like an outhouse or something like way back there, like in the distance. I don't know what that is, but
There's something little in the back. Someone's out there. Something's out there, or like a stone, or very interesting.
This looks like it's outside the dungeon, but the same skull from that guy is in the first image of the dungeon. So
yeah.
I don't know. It could just be enemy sharing in and out of the dungeon, which I'm not opposed to at all. But it's just interesting.
Yeah. Next up, if we continue our journey here, we've got another image that looks to be a shrine, and again, you have that blue hue. I have seen a shrine where there is a something approachable on an altar, like there is in the background, and it's sort of covered / encased in this blue
Seal.
protection. So I'm assuming this is a shrine. You do see the Sheikah symbol above said thing on the altar. There also are the orange constellations on the walls. But if you do look at the top, we've got that pattern again.
I'm starting to think that
on the ceiling.
it's just like a kind of like a theme. I don't know.
Universal pattern.
Yeah, just
it
like
could be.
this world of I don't know, Zelda, like the
It's
Hyruleans like their ant farm squiggles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Next picture is Link fighting a very angry dinosaur-looking enemy. This is one of my favorite images just because of the size of the dino's weapon.
That is like huge. I don't know how he's like holding it up like that.
It's so big. I mean, Link's got a nice axe. But this guy is like...
So his horn, if you look at this image and the next image, is like a squiggly weird horn, which is very similar to the skeleton guys that he's fighting with the giant hammer. So I don't know if it's part of like the day-night cycle where like they're like dead ones come back as like zombie skeleton ones or what.
Yeah, or enemies in different areas, because if you notice, he's in the snow and the skeletons are in the grass.
Yeah, they just look like have the same like horn and like facial structure and stuff. So I was just wondering.
Yeah, if we look at the next image, you can see he's much shorter in stature, but he does have the same sort of overall look and feel. There is a fire in the distance in the background of this image. Not sure who started that.
That looks like a guardian to me. That looks like the leg of a guardian.
Oh, could be a guardian. Or Zelda's just cooking some food.
Wait, does that look like a fire? Yeah, it does look like a fire. I don't know. I
think it's a guardian because you can kind of see sort of the like head structure,
and the blue light.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. I didn't get a fire, but I mean, now that you mentioned it, yeah.
It's a guardian breathing fire.
There you go.
It's probably its leg. But if we want elemental action, you can go to the next image with insane lightning.
It's crazy.
And we talked about this on the last Zelda video we made, how like lightning can like kill you now, so be careful. So yeah, this lightning will kill anyone.
Hold up, is that like a dragon behind the trees?
Yeah, I wanted to point out that there is
The thing is huge.
some sort of.
It looks like it looks like Noah's like a boat or something. I was gonna say Noah's Ark. It's like a boat or something. I don't think that's an actual dragon, is it?
No, I believe it's either a stable or a building or some sort of shop or something with that on the top. But it's cool how like the lightning draws all your attention and you're like, we hit a dragon in the background.
Yeah, I thought it was like Horizon meets Link. Like what is going on?
Please, that's not also I don't want those comparisons.
There also is orange lights off in the distance at a height, which I don't know if that's another sort of something of that sort. Next image is of good old Beetle Boy. Bringing his shop on the go. I love how he's got this flag that just like hangs in front of him. That's just incredibly epic marketing.
With his face.
Yeah, just genius. He's got a strange like crop top vest thing on.
Fantastic, man.
He's so strong.
I love the art of this game. I love the color, the art, the detail.
And I love that his shop on his back is shaped like a beetle, like with the horns and everything. So cool.
It's just It's freaking brilliant. So these are the images from the Game Informer digital issue. And again, like, very cool to finally see a boss, see some dungeon bits. You know, we don't have 100% confirmation on if all these images are from the same dungeon or if some are from shrines. We know there's only one dungeon being pictured. And then the images in the trailer, if those are also of that dungeon or of a different dungeon. But it's great to see a boss. It's great to see the scale and scope. And we knew that the world was big. And we knew that, you know, you ascend to high places and that there is a lot of just scope here. But it's really cool to see it actualized in the form of, you know, language we understand for Zelda, dungeons, bosses, things of that nature. It's very cool to see. There's one more image that I wanted to bring in here, which is from Facebook. It is a tree stump with a leaf on it. And I wanted to get you guys' take on if this is just a cute tree stump or if this indicates some sort of ability or why this would be focused.
I've never heard the term cute tree stump. But it looks like you can like put something there. I don't know, maybe you find like a leaf, so like a stone leaf somewhere you got to put there and this opens up a dungeon or something. I don't know.
It looks like it looks like the entrance to a bunker. And maybe this is like how they said you can put stamps. Maybe this is a real world application of your stamp on your map. It like fell from the sky, this leaf token.
This image just makes me very sad because I look at the left corner of the tree stump and all I think of is Makar.
I'm sorry.
And I wish he could be here.
This tree stump has ant farm squiggles on it too. Maybe that's the theme of the game. There's like an evil colony of ants that's taken over the entirety of the world.
No, but I think it is. I think it's very cool to see these images, and I fully understand some people not wanting to and wanting to keep themselves completely spoiler free in every way. But all this does for me is make me even more excited.
Yeah, can it just be March 3rd already? I just want it to be March 3rd.
Yeah, exactly. We are getting close. Let us know if you have any thoughts or you notice any details or things we may have missed in these photos. And before we get out of here, guys, favorite photo of the day?
I am partial to the lightning one. Like, the lightning looks super cool. So I'll go with
the
that.
lightning one is super cool. I don't know. I like the purple feet giant horse beast or dungeon or whatever that is just because it gives us this like Shadow of the Colossus giant climbable scale feeling for me.
And I will go with the image where it's from Link's from like the floor and you're looking up at just the size and scope of Windblight Ganon and sort of all of his just body and mechanism and gun and Link, and I just think it's so cool to see the detail, the coloring of both hero and villain, and then also just that scale and like he's blocking out the sun basically.
Yeah.
He is a true blight on this earth, but Link and Zelda and the game itself will be a blessing soon. Let us know your thoughts on the images from myself, Jake, and Gabe. Hopefully, we get a little bit more soon, but more hopefully. Let it just be March 3rd. Until that time, though, everybody, thanks again for watching. Switch Force out.